Greetings comic lovers and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from reviews of comics new and old to history to anecdotes to really wherever our whims take us. So, Nightwing and his butt. That's right, by popular demand. I mean, you all kind of imagined it was coming, I expect. I think there's just this image now for some people, a bit of a meme about some things that the channel is about, you know, an image like this, and I have to say I'm kind of okay with that. We're known for random comic reviews and butts. I think I can live with that. I guess it's not just butts, it's just bodies. Okay, but seriously, whenever I do forays into different characters' anatomies for whatever reason, because there's been a scandal or an interesting history or something like that, I always get requests for Dick Grayson, or we need to talk about Dick Grayson. So I was like, okay, I'm down for that. I mean, I'm down to talk about most things. But when this journey began, it ended up in places that I did not expect. I still don't know what happened, but I'm happy to share it with you. All of my videos are designed to be watched from beginning to end because they're all adventures that we go on together. I've opened up the Pandora's box of Dick's butt and other things, and it's nothing like the Batwing or the Monera cover, let me tell you. Those were far simpler. That's saying something considering the heat on the Monera cover comments. Now, Nightwing's butt. Where to start? It's actually a more difficult question than you would imagine. There are some simple jumping on points. The art by Nicholas Scott in 2019 that suddenly made the mainstream, or at least the Twitterverse, aware of Nightwing's rear end, or those who weren't already. But Nightwing has been known for having a perfect rear and for being a sex symbol from before that. And also the sex symbol came before the perfect rear. In fact, since it became a part of his character, it cycles. It's played up more in certain runs than others, and depending upon who's writing or drawing. It's always there, but it's a question of how prominent is the focus. So I was attempting to track back just where the perfect booty came from, but it's less of a moment and more of an evolution. An evolution on how Dick Grayson himself and his character are viewed. With a vid like this, I just went with the flow. Let's do it. So before we get started, I'm Sasha, and if you're enjoying this content, you know what to do. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and join us on this crazy comics journey. Okay, so Dick Grayson. Let me preface this by saying that I love Dick Grayson as a character. He's one of my faves. I can see why people don't like him. You know, don't like sidekicks or feel he's too goody-goody or golden boy. But he's always been a character that I liked. I was always particularly drawn to that transformation from Robin to Nightwing. The fact that it was a change that was allowed to stay, this period of growth. I don't know, I like it. I think I found something to enjoy from almost every Nightwing era. Gotta struggle a lot with Rick though, not gonna lie. Rick. So Dick Grayson was not always a sex symbol for obvious reasons. At the start, he was depicted as a child, and it was a long, slow progression before he even hit his teen years. And even once there, he wasn't considered a sex symbol right away. He was attractive, but that's par for the course with most comic book characters. Over time, that aspect of his character was more and more leaned into. And it appears to be because a lot of people have found ways to relate to Nightwing. Got lots of quotes about people being able to imprint their viewpoints onto Nightwing, or Dick Grayson. Where his sex symbol status really started to flourish was on the New Teen Titans, the run from the 1980s that started in 1980 exactly, bam. And this happened particularly after his transition from Robin to Nightwing. Also, teen needs to be in quotes for the New Teen Titans because after about a year in, we've got very few actual teens on that team. Titans would have been more accurate, but we've seen what happens when you call them Titans. You get the TV show, or the 90s run, or the Rebirth run. Feel about all of those how you will. It's just more fun to say Teen Titans. Alliteration, go! So the new Teen Titans saw a renewed focus on Dick Grayson as a romantic lead, particularly with fellow Teen Titan and heartthrob Starfire. In fact, these two were involved in a little scandal at the time, thanks to a certain panel that made it quite clear that the two of them had been intimate. Fornication had happened, and that's salacious. Because censorship, prudishness, comics code, adults in a relationship getting together, But some of that reaction was admittedly probably because people had grown up with Dick, and so it causes kind of a, oh, he's an adult. Because for many people, even on a subconscious level, just that's a very much a rite of passage into adulthood. For some, it opened up the floodgates that Dick was an adult and it was okay to view him and treat him as such. He was attractive. Ladies liked him. and men too, but that was rarely acknowledged until very recently. And thanks to him shedding the Robin mantle, he could now also be drawn differently. Less boyish, a more refined costume. Yes, even the disco one. Don't hate on Disco Wing and his really starched, pointy, it probably cut him collar. Leave Disco Wing alone. And so Nightwing was a firmly established character, a fan favorite on the Titans, and would eventually get his own solo series. And it is during one author's run on said solo series that things get interesting. That aspect of Dick Grayson being attractive to women and playing around a bit, or at least being in serial relationships, that kept going. But enter Devin Grayson, a writer who had some very specific beliefs about Dick Grayson, particularly when it came to his sexuality, and the idea that it was at the forefront of his character. She had a lot to say about it in a lot of different ways, and I found some great receipts / quotes that I still don't believe some of them. It's amazing. And her run for some has been pretty polarizing because of how some of those themes played out. During this run, Dick's sexuality and his existence as a sexual being were definitely brought to the forefront, not only in a cheesecake way, but also in some kinky ways. And ultimately in the much maligned rape he suffers on a rooftop at the hands of Tarantula. Although that wasn't the first time that something like that had happened to him, because Teen Titans and Mirage, that was also a thing. In this particular Tarantula incident, it took the author a very long time to even acknowledge that it had been an assault at all, but that's a topic for another video. For now, let's get some groundwork as to how she viewed Nightwing's sexuality. Personally, I think he's bisexual. I mean, look at his history. There's no denying that he likes women. The way I think about him, he likes everyone. He's sort of a contact junkie, just this incredibly physical and attractive person who lives wholly in the corporeal plane and responds with, processes things in his body before his head or heart. I imagine that he can be hypnotized by a touch, the way other people can be stopped dead in their tracks by the sight of money or the promise of true love. I think he likes kicking and kissing in almost equal measure, except kissing edges out ahead because you can do it for longer and it leads to nicer things. It's difficult to communicate in a comic, but he's the guy who never stops moving, who touches you a lot when he's trying to get something across to you, who withholds himself, becoming physically very rigid and distant when he's unhappy about something. So you may be asking, Sasha, what does this have to do with his butt? I was promised butt. Well, not much directly, but it gives a bit of a window into the art style and energy that will be brought into this run. Bearing all that in mind, Nightwing never didn't have a nice butt. It was just a question of how was it being looked at? Going from the more seemingly passive, traditional, just, oh, it's attractive, perfect standard of male body exploitation, to a more active look at it. This is meant to be looked at directly form that can often occur with female depictions. Because there's no doubt that cheesecake occurs on all sides, but the way it's conveyed can be very different. Mostly because you're trying to convey it to different groups, and that's one of the interesting things about Nightwing. Although again, that's very dichotomous. Nightwing and other characters are appealing to way more people than people think. The thing is that Grayson, the author, doesn't appear to be doing this intentionally. It's not some kind of let's sit down and objectify Nightwing kind of agenda. At least seemingly not. For example, when asked about the appeal of comics and characters to women, she had this to say: I have no idea. I'm bisexual and I'm a tomboy, and I'm just the worst representative of womankind that you can find. So I don't really know what girls are into, but I can't see why they wouldn't. You know, I have a lot of people asking me my opinion on the sort of improbable way that women are drawn, and does this turn girls off? And I'm like, well, yes, I can't find a female who looks like Catwoman, but nor can you find me a male who looks like Nightwing. And I would think that would be a draw. So that's fanciful. It's fantasy stuff. It can be done offensively, but I think for the most part it's not. It's just part of what we're doing. I think the big problem is the marketing. It's just not reaching them. And the specialty stores, for the most part, are not very female friendly and are not places most girls would wander into and just go, gee, what's here? They just sort of look at it and go, ugh, and keep walking, or go back to the ear piercing place in the mall or something. But again, comics is just a medium, and there's absolutely nothing about it that suggests it would be gender specific. Years later, she would go on to say, though, that she felt that there should be more targeted marketing towards females, a la Twilight, like using that style of marketing, that is. You know, oh my god, his shirt's off. The Jason Momoa approach. This era appears to have opened, or at least consciously started a shift in how Nightwing was sexualized. But it wasn't always in your face. I mean, it was, but how it was meant to be looked at wasn't. Again, it depends on the era, because then you'll go for periods of time with things being pretty even, with him being, yes, attractive, but not honed in on, and then you'll also get to runs like Grayson by author Tim Seeley, which is essentially Cheesecake the comic book. In that run, his butt is being used specifically to draw focus and to make a point about male versus female exploitation, playing with it, albeit in a fashion that draws less ire, so you can get away with a lot of things with Nightwing that you could not with a female character, for a variety of reasons. We have things like the Midnighter literally identifying him by his butt, him being pawed at by women when he goes undercover at a strip club, though that would occur later on in the Nightwing rebirth era. Just an indication of how this view of Nightwing has lingered. Since the New 52, the butt has definitely been more prominent. It hasn't faded quite as much into the background as it has in periods past. And the way it's looked at has become more firmly entrenched, especially thanks to the rise of reblogging sites, social media, and just the ability of people to share images and the like back and forth. Fans could get together before the internet, of course they could, and they did, but it has made it much quicker and easier in some cases, which comes with pros and cons since the digital age. So what did someone like Tim Seeley, who did such a exploitative run of Nightwing, have to say? Sorry, Grayson, he wasn't Nightwing, he was a spy. He stated, "We live in a society that really enjoys and glorifies youth. We live in a society." Dick is and has been for 75 years an epitome of youth. He's always going to be that boyish charmer in a world of adults. See what I mean? There's a lot of projection going on with Nightwing. Since the modern era, modern at the time of this recording, where you can even get busts that just lovingly sculpt Nightwing's behind, Devin Grayson has been quoted as loving that this has even happened. "I love that Nightwing's ass specifically is a thing. You have, as mentioned, the Nicholas Scott essentially butt spread. Creators feel comfortable commenting on this in ways that they wouldn't on other characters. You see this with all creators, but also with some who draw a bit of raised eyebrows because they have been known to complain about cheesecake in the other direction. For example, Gail Simone tweeted, "A cake shaped like Nightwing's butt, and also world peace," when asked what birthday gift she thought Barbara would like. Okay, so the butt. For me, I couldn't find a clear genesis or panel that was like, this is the moment, like where it just crystallized and became the legendary butt of the gods. It is, like I said, more a shift in evolution in how the character is viewed. What I was able to find was a near universal and good-natured butt thirst for Dick Grayson's butt. But I've said that a lot this video. Dick Grayson's rear appears to be a rear for all, to be treasured and mocked and literally sculpted. A place where everyone can gather around and enjoy with the knowledge that it's all a bit of fun. Almost like a safe space for cheesecake. But that's not all it's touted as. For some it has a much deeper meaning. For example, I've seen it called a feminist victory. And you know me, I can't do anything the easy way. Nightwing's butt has always left me with a lot of questions. Questions that are easier to ask about him because it's easier to have conversations like this about a male character without getting your head bitten off. And I, like most people, like my head. Okay, so get ready, because I'm a person who likes to ask questions like this. I love comics and I can acknowledge escapism, but I can also acknowledge that sometimes there are questions about realism and the like, and all kinds of things that still deserve to be asked. The two don't need to be mutually exclusive. But you know the deal. Get your tea, get your stress ball. Warned, warned, warning, red alert. In what way is Dick Grayson a victory? For while we can have an open convo about Dick and laugh and make jokes about butts, the same convo is not open in the other direction, or at least not as open. Now, of course, there are different societal histories and expectations in place, and those also again vary from region to region. This is, of course, when it comes to male and female sexuality, and people's views about it. And that's still looking at it through a very narrow lens. But why cheesecake for some and not for all? How can it be harmless fun on one hand, but a dangerous societal precedent on the other? Is there room for fun on both ends and people need to lighten up and take a big bite? Or can people take it too far on both ends too? If something can potentially foster or encourage negative opinions or stereotypes or blind spots, does that not happen with all types of characters, regardless of gender or sex? Should we not be able to have convos about men not wanting to be objectified or touched or pawed at either? Anybody can be uncomfortable or find themselves in a situation where they don't want to be pursued or where societal perceptions end up working against them. Nightwing was raped on a rooftop, and it took the author 10 years to acknowledge that it even happened. And narratively, never, not really. In fact, I see it worked through in fanfiction way more than I ever have in canon. And then here's another question. Does the fun had at Nightwing's expense actually play directly into the old paradigms people believe are already at play in comics? That male sexuality is dominant and female passive. The idea that it's okay for women to look at Nightwing, however, because ultimately they can't do anything, or are perceived as not having active, aggressive, or threatening sexualities. See, it's just deep. But again, all of this is very dichotomous, and assuming that only women enjoy looking at Nightwing and only men enjoy looking at, say, Power Girl, and that's also not the case. We know that to be true. People can be getting a variety of different things out of looking at these characters. Not all of it's sexual either. I know, right? Why can't I just enjoy the cake? I've lost my cake rights. We had a perfect chance to just talk about cake, and cake's actually even slang for that, and we're not even doing it right. Some feel cake for all or cake for none. Others feel that is an unfair standard, as there are too many external factors at play that make them mean different things. While others ask, do they actually? And some say, they're just comics. Why is this a conversation at all? Nightwing's butt is, and it actually means a lot of things to different people. From victory, a feminist triumph, or ironically a reverse cheesecake trump card in the opposite direction. For others, it's a bit of fun. For some creators, it's a statement or the expression of a fantasy. It's so much more than the moment because it's become wrapped up in Nightwing as a character. This is now part of him. It's very rare to see a conversation about Nightwing where somebody doesn't bring up a butt, specifically his. You can't pancake booty him now. The people wouldn't stand for it. When they were casting people for Nightwing, one of the questions was, do they have the butt? Looking for the butt. On the hunt for the booty. I don't know, I find all of this interesting. Personally, I love Nightwing, whether he has a perfect butt or not. But since it's something that's so closely associated with him these days, I do find my mind going down these tangents sometimes when I see some of the covers, but that's not uncommon for me. I ponder stuff like this a lot. I mean, I won't say no to a bit of cheesecake. I'm a fangirl and a shipper. But sometimes things can go too far. I know not everybody agrees with that, but that's okay. The character, the time, the context, the format, so many things can end up making a difference. So the question that some of you dread, I want to hear what you think. I know for some these kind of discussions make them mad, or they just want an answer or feel they have the answer and it's case closed. I think tangents like this are just as much a part of being a fan like debating Captain Kirk versus Captain Picard, or how big is the TARDIS on the inside actually? How many rooms are in there? Will he ever be ginger? Probably not. They're all at their core actually pretty nerdy and pertaining to a hobby that outside of a certain group not a lot of people get. And people have different questions and perspectives and enjoy things in different ways. That's not innately good or bad, like with anything, it just depends on how it's employed. So this was a thing that I made and hopefully you watched all the way through, because again, all of these are meant to be watched to the end. I mean, I think any YouTuber would say that about any of their videos, but you know, some people run off half-cocked. I watched 30 seconds and I can already tell that you are out to destroy the world. Never stop wondering, no matter what anybody says. Where do you stand on the questions of Nightwing's butt and cheesecake? Do you react to it differently when it's a male character or a female character? Do you feel that in general it's presented differently for both characters and that Nightwing is very much an exception, like a unicorn? What's something you've fallen into a deep, ponderous hole about? And of course, do you feel you can pinpoint the origin of the perfect butt? I hope you got something out of this and enjoyed contemplating Nightwing with me. Please, if you want to hear about any specific Nightwing incidents, let me know down below. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. I'm Sasha, thanks so much for watching Casually Comics. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to spend it discussing comics with me, especially when it gets rambly like this. And I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.